Hey guys, John V here with PhoneArena, and this is a review of the Pocophone F1. Come on, no one likes it when things become more expensive to buy, but that's just the reality. And that's partly why Pocophone, a sub-brand of Xiaomi, was able to make such an impression when it announced the Pocophone F1 not too long ago, with that irresistible price point of around $350. Even though it's not available here in the US, it may be worth importing. The design instantly draws comparisons to the OnePlus 6 because of its overall size, the notch of the display, even the arrangement of the camera and the fingerprint sensor in the back of the phone. It's very similar. Our version here is actually the armored edition of the phone, which flaunts DuPont Kevlar fiber for a more sophisticated look. However, the phone's overall design style is still a tame one, something that looks great for its price point, but it doesn't match the premium look and feel of other flagships. It doesn't feature any sort of water-resistant construction, but we shouldn't be shocked because of its price point, but we do like the fact that it does have a headphone jack. The display here is a 6.2-inch 1080 by 2246 LCD display, and it's very similar to the OnePlus 6 in terms of the specs, but also because it has that notch. Luckily, you could hide it in the settings, which is great, so it's not as distracting. The display, though, is more than suitable for most things, but it just has this drab look to the fact that it looks subdued in tone and it lacks the iridescence to command attention. Outdoor visibility is okay with its 439 nit brightness, but at wide angles, there are some visible distortion. The Pocophone F1 is running MIUI 9.6, running on top of Android 8.1 Oreo. Now, most US consumers aren't familiar with this, but it's the same interface that you'll see running in other recent Xiaomi smartphones. On the surface, the look and feel is very straightforward and simplified, but it's still more than functional as far as getting work done. However, it does come with some bloatware apps, which you can't uninstall some of them, which is a pain, but besides that, the experience at the very least covers the basics, and at the same time, we're at least happy that it's not overly complicated with redundant features. The biggest thing about this specific experience is that it uses a gesture-based interface, kind of similar to the iPhone X, XS, so it's very close in terms of copying those gestures. We gotta admit, one of the most amazing parts about the phone is that it's powered by the Qualcomm Snapdragon 845, the same processor that's in pretty much all the flagships out there. Our unit here is coupled with 8GB of RAM, and the phone screams really fast. It's very responsive and snappy. Over on the gaming side, it handles graphics processing with no problems at all. You'll have some really smooth frame rates, which is great. On top of that, there is 128GB of internal storage, and there's expansion courtesy of the micro SD card slot. On the back of the phone, we're presented with an AI dual camera configuration, and that breaks down to a main 12MP f1.9 camera and a secondary 5MP f2.0 one. Obviously, this dual camera configuration allows for portrait effects that blur out the backgrounds from the subject. As for the front, it's packing a pretty beefy 20MP camera. Similar to other AI implementations, the AI camera here will intelligently detect the scene and try to deliver the most optimal results. The camera interface covers all the basics. It has modes such as panoramic, portrait, and even a manual one. For most users, the camera interface suffices with its mixture of modes. Typically, we don't have high expectations from phones in this price range, but the Pocophone F1 surprises us because it definitely strikes a balance with its performance. Now, when you're taking normal photos, they're okay looking, but if you use the AI camera mode on, it does some really good enhancements to the shots because you get a boost in contrast and saturation to really exemplify the photo even more. And we're also surprised by the front-facing camera because selfies are sharp, highly detailed, and they exhibit punchy colors, while portrait mode does an amazing job of separating our faces from the background. It even holds up very well under low-light situations because the performance doesn't degrade tremendously. Details may be more indistinct, but there's not as much noise in the scene to make the overall shot distracting to the eye. Now, for some reason, the AI camera mode doesn't do a whole lot. You get some minimal gains between those shots and the standard ones. Over on the video side, it tops out at 4K 3840 by 2160, and the videos are accompanied with sharp details, but colors tend to be a little bit more saturated in tone. It doesn't have OIS, but instead offers electronic image stabilization. However, it doesn't do a whole lot to stabilize the footage. Using it under low light, though, we tend to notice a little bit more of an underexposed tone with the footage, but at least noise is minimized enough to make it tolerable, especially if it's a high contrast scene. Another interesting thing to know is that it does have the same size as the OnePlus 6, but they're able to stuff a larger 4000 milliamp hour battery, and the performance is outstanding because in our battery benchmark test, it reached a mark of 10 hours, which is pretty impressive. In our real-world usage, it's also equally impressive. Usually by the end of the night, we're at the 40% level, which is pretty good. Over on the recharging side, it doesn't take too long, a little bit under 2 hours, which is more than enough even though it doesn't offer wireless charging. When it comes to call quality, volume isn't a problem just as long as you place your ear directly over the earpiece, because if not, it can be tough to discern voices. And speaking of that, they tend to have a slightly shrill tone at the loudest setting. On the other end of the line, there's a little bit of distortion, but it's again acceptable enough for our callers to make us out. But you'll want to stay away from using the speakerphone because of the heavy distortion and its subdued tone. Xiaomi's Pocophone F1 is one of those sleeping giants that's hiding in the shadows, just waiting for that opportunity to strike down the competition. Seriously, there's a lot going for this phone that starts at $350, which is incredibly bonkers for a phone featuring a Snapdragon 845. Adding to that is how we're amazed to see it performing very well in a variety of areas. From its speedy processing performance to the exceptional snapshots its cameras capture and the long-lasting battery life, the Pocophone F1 remarkably covers the gamut in being a well-rounded smartphone. The only downside, though, is that it doesn't support as many bands in the US, so if you plan on importing it, chances are you won't have access to LTE. And that's probably the biggest hurdle that'll prevent US consumers from snagging this value-rich smartphone. Needless to say, it's a valiant first effort, and we're already eager to see what its successor will be able to deliver. And that is it for a review of the Pocophone F1. If you guys want to learn more about it, you can check out our website, PhoneArena.com. This is John V, signing off.